Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. On a crisp Saturday morning, the hallways of Little Stars Kindergarten were abuzz with parents and excited children, all converging for Parent Day. The walls were adorned with colorful artwork and craft projects that spoke of children's unbounded imaginations. As I walked through the kindergarten, my heart swelled with pride, anticipating seeing my son, Jamie's, latest masterpiece. Jamie, with his mop of curly hair and wide grin, spotted me and came running. "Daddy! Look what I made," he exclaimed, tugging me towards a corner of his classroom where several drawings were displayed. His teacher, Mrs. Keller, gave me a warm smile as we approached. "There's yours, Daddy." Jamie pointed to a picture up on the wall, his eyes sparkling with excitement. It was a family drawing, but something immediately struck me as odd. There were three figures, a smaller one that I recognized as Jamie, another that unmistakably represented his mother, and then there was an unfamiliar man. "And who is this, buddy?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light as I pointed to the man drawn with a wide smile standing next to the figure of his mother. "That's Uncle Mike. He comes to play when you go to work," Jamie explained innocently, not realizing the weight of his words. The room seemed to tilt slightly as his words hung in the air. Uncle Mike. Who was that? Mrs. Keller, picking up on the shift in the atmosphere, quickly interjected, "Kids have such active imaginations, don't they?" But her words felt hollow, and a cold seed of suspicion started to plant itself in my heart. I managed a smile for Jamie's benefit and spent the rest of the morning participating in activities, but my mind was elsewhere. Who was this Uncle Mike? Why hadn't I heard about him before? Questions swirled in my mind, casting a shadow over the day. Back home, after putting Jamie to bed, I confronted my wife, Anna. "So, who's Mike? Jamie mentioned him today. Said he comes over a lot when I'm at work." Anna's face drained of color, her eyes darting away before meeting mine. "It's nothing, really. Just a friend from the gym. He's helped with some repairs around the house, that's all." But her voice trembled, and her explanation sounded rehearsed. My gut churned, the pieces not adding up. The image of the drawing burned in my brain, how the Uncle Mike figure stood just a bit too close to the depiction of Anna. It felt wrong. Suspicion turned to resolve as I made a decision. I needed the truth, no matter what it might reveal. That night, as Anna slept, I went through her phone. The texts I found confirmed my worst fears. Not just a friend, but much more, the deceit laid bare in midnight messages and heart emojis. The next few days were a blur of anger and hurt. I hired a private investigator, collected enough evidence of the infidelity, and confronted both of them. The fallout was explosive. I filed for divorce, ensuring that the proceedings favored my custody of Jamie. Watching Anna's life unravel felt like a cold vindication, but it was a hollow victory, overshadowed by the betrayal. As I sat in my now half-empty house, the silence was a constant reminder of the cost of this truth. My resolve hardened. Anna and this Uncle Mike had shattered our family, and while I had acted decisively, part of me knew this was just the beginning. There were legal battles ahead, and the fight for my son's future loomed large. I vowed to protect Jamie, no matter what it took. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the room, I realized this was only the opening chapter of a longer battle. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was determined to navigate it, for Jamie's sake. The intrigue of what lay ahead was daunting, but necessary. This was just the beginning. The morning sun barely penetrated the gloom that hung over my house as I prepared for the day. My mind raced with strategies and scenarios, the imminent confrontation with Mike dominating my thoughts. Today, I would face the man who had infiltrated my home, my life. I needed to see the betrayal for myself, to understand why. Armed with the evidence, I drove to Mike's workplace. He was a physical therapist, his office a place where trust was paramount, ironic, given the deception he was part of. I parked across the street, watching as patients came and went, my heart pounding with a mix of dread and determination. Finally, I saw him. Mike stepped outside, laughing as he bid goodbye to a colleague. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car and crossed the street. "Mike!" I called out as I approached. He turned, his smile fading when he saw my expression. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice cautious. "We need to talk." "Now," I stated firmly, my eyes locked on his. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded, leading me inside to a small, private room. The door shut with a click that echoed too loudly in the tense silence. "I know about you and Anna," I began, the words harsh and bitter. "I've seen the messages, the pictures." "How long?" Mike's face hardened as he crossed his arms defensively. "Look, I don't owe you any explanations. You wrecked my family." My voice rose, anger boiling over. "I trusted her, and she brought you into my house. Around my son." "It's not all black and white," Mike retorted, his voice steady but his eyes revealing a flicker of guilt. "Things happen. People aren't happy, and they save it. I'm not here for excuses. I'm here because you're going to stop seeing her, or the next conversation we have won't be just between us. Understand?" The threat was clear, my tone icy. Mike paused, measuring his response. I'll end it. I never wanted to cause this much trouble." "Good. Because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are." "A home wrecker," I hissed, the words slicing through the room. He nodded slowly, the gravity of the situation settling in. "It ends today. I promise." I didn't linger for more assurances, his promise was enough for now. As I walked out of his office, the weight of the morning's events began to settle on my shoulders. Retribution was part of this process, but it offered little solace. The damage to my family was done, and the path to healing was unclear. Driving back, I called my lawyer to discuss the next steps for the divorce proceedings. "We have more leverage now." I confronted him, "and he's ending it." "That's good to hear," my lawyer replied. "It'll strengthen your case significantly. Let's push for full custody and the house." As I hung up, the reality of the situation hit me. This was just another phase in a long, painful journey. The betrayal was too deep, the wounds too fresh. But as I pulled into my driveway, a sense of purpose took hold. I was fighting not just for retribution but for a new beginning for Jamie and me. The road ahead was daunting, but I was ready to face whatever came our way. This was far from over, it was just another chapter in a battle that would redefine our lives. The following weeks were a blur of legal consultations and custody discussions. My lawyer and I sat in the stark conference room, papers strewn across the table, as we prepared for the first hearing. I was determined to not only divorce Anna but to ensure she wouldn't hurt Jamie with her irresponsible choices. "Based on the evidence you provided, we have a strong case for full custody," my lawyer, Mr. Thompson, explained, pointing to the affidavits and photo evidence. "The court will see that it's in Jamie's best interest to stay with you." I nodded, clenching my jaw. "Make sure they understand the kind of betrayal we're dealing with. She brought this man into our home, exposed Jamie to this affair." As we finalized our strategy, my phone buzzed. It was Anna. Her timing, as always, was impeccable. "What do you want, Anna?" I asked, my voice cold, stepping away for privacy. "I want to talk. Can we meet?" "Just you and me," she pleaded, her voice shaky. "This isn't a good time. I'm with my lawyer, preparing for the hearing," I said, glancing back at the door, my tone dismissive. "It's about Jamie. Please, It's important, she added quickly, desperation creeping into her tone. Reluctantly, I agreed to meet her at a nearby cafe after my meeting. When I arrived, she was already there, her eyes red, a stark contrast to the composed image she always presented. "Thank you for coming," she began, her hands nervously fidgeting with a napkin. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I want to make things right." "You think you can just make things right?" I scoffed, my anger resurfacing. "I know I've made terrible mistakes. But I want to be part of Jamie's life. He shouldn't suffer because of what I did," she said earnestly. "I'm filing for full custody, Anna. After what you've done, you think I can trust you with Jamie?" My voice was firm, the decision clear in my mind. "Please, don't do this. I'm his mother. He needs me," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "Our son needs stability, something you compromised." "This meeting changes nothing," I stated, standing up to leave. "Wait. I'll do anything. Please. Let's find a way to co-parent, for Jamie's sake," she reached out, grabbing my arm. Pulling away, I looked her straight in the eyes. "You should have thought of Jamie before bringing Mike into our home. I'll see you in court." As I walked away, her sobs filled the cafe, but my resolve was firm. This was about protecting Jamie, and I wasn't going to back down. The day of the hearing arrived, and the courtroom was cold and imposing. Anna was there, looking worn and anxious. The proceedings were grueling, with testimonies that painted a clear picture of deceit and disruption. When it was my turn to speak, I laid out everything: the discovery, the confrontation, the impact on Jamie. The judge listened intently, his expression unreadable. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally delivered his verdict. "Considering the circumstances and the evidence presented, I am granting Mr. Harris full custody of his son, Jamie. Visitation rights for Mrs. Harris will be determined under supervised conditions." Relief washed over me as the gavel fell. It was a victory, albeit a painful one. As I left the courtroom, I felt the weight of the past months begin to lift slightly. This chapter was closed, but the story of rebuilding our lives, mine and Jamie's, was just beginning. There was much to do, and the road to healing was long, but for the first time in months, I felt hope for the future. In the quiet aftermath of the court's decision, my home felt larger, emptier. Jamie was asleep, the only sound in the otherwise silent house the faint ticking of the clock. I sat in the dim light of my study, a glass of whiskey in hand, contemplating the hollow victory. Custody was mine, but the betrayal still festered like a wound. The night was deep and still when my phone vibrated. An unknown number flashed on the screen. Cautiously, I answered, "Hello. Is this Mr. Harris?" a cautious, unfamiliar male voice asked from the other end. Speaking with a firm tone, I confirmed, "Yes." "Who is this?" "I think we need to talk." "It's about your wife, ex-wife now, I suppose." "There's more you don't know," he said, his voice urgent. Curiosity piqued, I agreed to meet him at a secluded bar downtown. The air was crisp as I stepped out, the night unusually quiet. At the bar, a man in a dark coat waved me over. His face was serious, his eyes wary. As I sat down, he slid an envelope across the table. "My name is Eric. I was Mike's friend." I opened the envelope. Inside were photos, more texts, but these were different. They showed Anna and Mike with another man, Eric himself. The texts weren't just flirtatious, they were planning, scheming. Not just an affair, but something more insidious. Eric saw the confusion on my face. It wasn't just an affair. I was part of it at first. They were planning to leave the country, take Jamie with them. Start over. It was all planned. Rage built inside me, a storm threatening to burst. And why come to me now? Why tell me this? I demanded, my voice low and dangerous. Because I couldn't go through with it. It was wrong. And Mike got cold feet too, after you confronted him. He's scared now. They both are. I thought you should know, Eric admitted, his voice filled with remorse. The betrayal was deeper than I had imagined. They had intended to tear my son from me completely. A cold, calculated plan. My mind raced, formulating a plan. Where are they now? They're meeting tonight. At their usual spot, a cabin outside the city. I can show you, he offered, standing up, ready to lead the way. We drove in silence, the night deepening around us as we approached the secluded cabin. Lights flickered through the trees, the only sign of life in the wilderness. We parked a distance away, and I approached alone, moving quietly through the underbrush. Peering through the window, I saw Anna and Mike, packing bags, their movements hurried, desperate. The sight of them, so close yet so far from the life we had shared, fueled my fury. I burst through the door, startling both of them. Planning a trip? I asked, my voice dripping with venom. Anna spun around, her face a mask of fear. James, please, let us explain. There's nothing to explain. I shouted, cutting her off. My gaze then turned to Mike. You think you can steal my life, my son? Mike backed away, hands raised. James, I'm sorry, it went too far. Without another word, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. As I reported the situation, the color drained from both their faces. The police arrived quickly, and as Anna and Mike were handcuffed, the reality of their situation became clear. They had not only lost my trust but any chance of a future free from bars. As they were led away, Anna's eyes met mine, filled with tears and regret. But there was no sympathy in my heart, only the cold satisfaction of justice. The deception had been deeper than I ever imagined, but in exposing it, I had protected Jamie and ensured that their betrayal would haunt them forever. As I drove back to the city, the first light of dawn was breaking, and with it came a sense of closure, of a chapter conclusively ended, not with forgiveness but with retribution.